belongs to the government and is permissible. What's important sometimes, I think we need to also realize, is under what circumstances. And so God says here, if you take a human life, then if you commit murder, then you should be put to death. And first-degree premeditated murder is basically the only thing that capital punishment is reserved for. Treason is another item that, especially in times of war and conflict, desertion, but in a way, that's because that's murder. If you abandon your post, if you betray your country, especially to the enemy and things, that's going to cost the lives of those whom you betray. And that's why that's a capital punishment in that respect. So the government, as Christians, we can say that, yes, the government has the authority to do that. Now, under what circumstances? How is that carried out? How is that enforced? May or may not be done. It may or may not be being done in a just way. So that's something that we need to be, the government needs to be accountable for how they convict and carry out those punishments, the ultimate punishment of death. We need to be sure that the person that is being put to death is the guilty one, and, according to our Constitution, that it be done not in a cruel and unusual way, but, a humane way. We don't torture them to death. That would be inhumane, and I think that would be morally wrong.
Is that why then in the United States specifically that capital punishment varies from state to state?
Because it's not enumerated in the Constitution as a federal responsibility, it's delegated to the states to administer. And the federal government only has jurisdiction over federal laws. So if you break a state law, then the state is the one who owes the punishment for that. That's a United States constitutional sort of thing. So in Illinois, this is probably 20 years ago now, they were finding that there's a project started like the Truth Project or the Innocence Project, something like that. They start with the rise of DNA evidence and some of these things. A group of lawyers and law students and things began investigating these death row inmate cases. And by utilizing DNA evidence, they were finding that there were people on death row scheduled to be executed who the DNA evidence conclusively exonerated them. Like, they did not do it. Like, the blood type or the semen sample or whatever it is that was found on that person that could only have come from them doesn't match the person that they have in prison. It's like, like the blood was A negative and this guy is O positive. Can't be his blood. It's impossible. And then the DNA can give you more specific than that. So they were finding, like a disturbing percentage. One would be a disturbing percentage, but more than one. It was relatively, so they put a moratorium on capital punishment in Illinois. Now,
is this still that way?
I think so, yeah. I think Illinois still has all their capital punishment on hold. And I think that's appropriate. I think the state of Illinois still has the right to do capital punishment, but they also have the responsibility to make sure that it's being carried out justly. And I had somebody once say, it's like, well, that person who is in prison for it probably was, they don't arrest him for nothing. He's probably was in a bad place. He shouldn't have been, or something like that either. And I'm like, no. That's the worst argument I've ever heard in my life.
Lots of stupid people out there.
That's it's like, well, he was probably guilty of something. So it's like, no. What if that was your son? What if that was your daughter that was, wrongly convicted of that and put in prison there? So, I think they do well to ensure that it is being carried out justly. And when they found that, sort of disproportionately, unjustly being carried out, they put a moratorium on them. And I would support that. I would support them correcting it finding a way to still have the threat of whether it's life imprisonment or death is it's twofold. It's a deterrent in that, well, I probably shouldn't murder somebody because I'll lose my life. I mean, that's legitimate. But it's also that, you look at some of the, serial killers, mass murderers, just these really, really depraved individuals who, in a sense, it's not just that it's a deterrent to them, but it's also saying you're so evil and you have no value for other humanity and human life, you need to be removed from the population. You don't deserve life any longer because you've taken so many other lives. And that is just, and it is, as Christians, something that we can look to Scripture and say, yes, God does give the government permission to do this. It is within the government's purview to do this thing. Police officers have it's within their jurisdiction to end a life in defense of another life. But they don't have carte blanche to kill whomever they choose.